Hi, this is the Voice of Thoggy, and today I'm talking about Pewdiepie, YouTube, and old English coffee shops. Yes, this is another video on Pewdiepie and Wall Street Journal's hit piece on him, smearing him as a racist, a white supremacist, and a bunch of other just nonsensical thing. So this is not really directed at motivations behind the hit pieces on Pewdiepie. I only became aware of Pewdiepie when he was in his push to hit 50 million subs because he was going to delete his channel. And that's how I heard about him, just because of that advertising gimmick. And so, yeah, I went over there when he was, 47, 48, 49, somewhere in that range, and subbed. And I was only there just for the kecks to see if he would actually sub his, or delete his channel because, he was the biggest one on YouTube. I had watched one or two of his videos a little bit. I mean, not even the whole thing, just, a minute or so. I was like, no, not for me. But I stayed subbed because I was curious to see whether or not he would. Now, I had no idea. I had no idea that he had a backup channel and all that stuff. And so when he hit the 50 million and deleted his backup, I laughed and unsubbed because I didn't give a fuck. Now, during the time before I unsubbed, I did watch one of the videos that were, quote, controversial, unquote, where he, said, it's the one where he does the thing, is it because I'm white? And, I laughed at the time. And I guess a little bit later, I don't know, even a minute or so later, when he was just continuing on with a little ramble, I was like, no, wait a second. He can't possibly be serious, which I guess is a really good compliment to his comedic skills. Because I laughed and then, thought a bit about it. Still, regardless, I didn't even think about much about it and went on. And as I said, I dropped my sub after, it was clear he played his joke and I got my laugh and went on my merry way. Did not think about this at all. Did not think about Pewdiepie or anything about it until the Wall Street Journal attack piece. So I did a little bit of quick investigation and realized it was all bullshit. And I'm resubbed now mainly just because I want to see his reactions and so forth. And so far, they've been spectacular. However, this brings me to coffeehouse culture, and I want to talk a little bit about these old coffeehouses, and I mean old, I mean just 17th, 18th century English coffeehouses. I'm not an expert by any stretch. I just simply stumbled across this by, reading the internet about coffee and tea. And I've been thinking about this as the Pewdiepie thing has exploded, and this analogy makes more sense to me. But first, let me describe this culture just briefly. Starting in roughly the 17th century and extending all the way through the 18th century, there was a rise of shops that literally just sold coffee. So they were cheap. You could pay basically a penny. You'd come in, you get, let's just call it a cup of coffee, and you got to drink coffee and interact with anybody there. And there was usually it was just a place to get a coffee, a cheap coffee, and then you could talk or listen to people. Now, this culture itself exploded. I mean, pretty quickly, every town and hamlet in England seemed to have a coffee shop or multiple coffee shops, and they became a very popular place where people from different social classes got to interact with each other. It was a leveling of the classes, and it was interesting because it produced a great discussion of ideas on a variety of topics. And the richness and level of those discussions probably were enhanced by the fact there was no booze sold in these places. Now, of course, I'm sure there was alcohol that was not, but in general, there was no booze sold there. The taverns, of course, still existed and so forth. It was just that it was mainly once you remove that general intoxicant, it probably did improve discussion and reduced fights. However, the number of topics that were discussed in these English coffee houses was immense. In fact, they became known sort of as penny universities, penny universities. So you would pay your penny, go in, get your saucer of coffee, and you would then be able to discuss anything or listen to anything. Get literally lessons on things like mathematics, learn how to solve a perimeter, how many bricks you needed, or what was the current take on biology or history. Or you would go to a stock exchange, literally, and buy and sell stocks, or go to auctions, or play games, or look at games, or discuss games, or do a variety of things that probably sound very familiar. So you can imagine there's all sorts of drama from all sorts of different sources and all sorts of gossip and entertainment. On top of the discussions that were occurring in the sort of this breakdown or leveling of classes that occurred within each coffee shop, you also had news runners, people who would come in from outside and sell newspapers or news sheets concerning the local gossip and news and stories and anything of interest in the day at the current time. And this provided information flow into the coffee houses to, feed that gist, that the dramas and the arguments and what to debate, and besides all the other additional drama that would be occurring within any, community. Quick word on the patrons here. Now, the patrons, of course, were male. It was 17th, 18th century. The females did not normally go into coffee shops as a patron. There were females present, of course, and they obviously influenced the social discourse. They were servers. They worked in the kitchen staff. They actually owned coffee shops, so they benefited from, obviously the owners did, making money off this. However, they were not a patron and generally were, generally excluded from this sort of discussion. It should be obvious where I'm going with this. That is, YouTube is like a giant coffee shop, a really big coffee shop. I mean, Library of Babel coffee shop size. So YouTube gets about 1 billion or so unique visitors every month. That's a huge coffee shop. And the cool thing is the cost of access to YouTube is very, very low. You have to have access to internet and you have to have access to a device to view that internet. That's your penny. If you come in with those two requirements, you can view anybody's content. You can listen to your heart's content on anything. You can also comment, of course. You can also create your own videos, your own commentary, and get your own little room, your own little spot, your own little table in this grand coffee shop. And that's so cool. Now, this is not, a public square where anything goes. It is YouTube's. It is the proprietary's coffee shop, so there's no booze allowed. So I guess an analogy would be there's no porn allowed. It's snuck in occasionally, but, it's not. So Pewdiepie is essentially a really popular patron of this YouTube coffee shop. Lots of people go to his room. Lots of people hang around his table. What he says is entertaining to a whole bunch of people. Enter in just a fairly minor news runner, the Wall Street Journal. They come in and they attempt to sell their news sheet of essentially manufactured crap, where they take a bunch of quotes out of context, a bunch of video out of context, and try to smear this really popular guy for various motivations. It doesn't matter. In that coffee shop, in YouTube itself, as you can judge for yourself looking at on any search you want, the support level for Pewdiepie is very high. Effectively, everybody in the coffee house just laughs at this news runner trying to sell this bullshit, and they sell basically 0 copies, maybe 1 or 2 for people who just want to laugh at what they're doing. But they lose. They walk out and go, well, fuck, this didn't work. They didn't get what they wanted. They didn't sell a bunch of their shit there. However, like coffee shops, YouTube does not exist in isolation outside the real world. And Pewdiepie is suffering, of course, real-world consequences from the smear job. I mean, the loss of the Disney subscription, the loss of the Disney sponsorship, the cancellation of the RedTube series, which not only affects Pewdiepie, but also affects all the people that were going to work on that series. I mean, there's a bunch of people, again, that are not rich and powerful, that are essentially fucked. They thought they had a good, solid gig for probably a full season, and it's gone. They're not paid in advance. Maybe a few of the above-the-line folks are, but not the majority of people who are probably working on this show. And they are screwed. That's it. They're gone. Oh, well, go find another gig. Hee-haw. Hope you felt good, Wall Street Journal. Now I'm just kind of rambling here. Back to the main point of real-world effects. Besides that, there are also other YouTubers, other patrons in this shop who see these outside world effects of loss of sponsorship, loss of outside contracts, etc., happening to this really popular and rich guy who can absorb it, and understandably feel somewhat nervous about that their lives could be affected, their income could be affected in a variety of ways. It's unnerving, and I do relate to that in some sense. I mean, in some senses, because I don't have the financial skin in the game that a lot of these bigger YouTubers do. Not just their ad revenue on YouTube, but also outside where they may sell product or merchandise or get other sponsorships or whatnot. Excuse me. Now, YouTube is free to make whatever decisions it wants, just like any coffee shop owner is free to make whatever decisions they want. YouTube worries me if it goes too far down the line of conceding too much control to outside forces. If it really starts to restrict or punish users by demonetizing videos or dropping you down tiers of advertising or taking other steps to restrict the availability of your videos in search algorithms or whatever you want to think about, that's going to hurt their business. Hopefully they're aware of that. Just like coffee shop owners eventually what happened to the whole coffee shop culture is it failed in the 18th century, or at least it almost disappeared. There are a few still around today for a number of reasons. One, because tea is easier to produce in a commercial setting than, say, coffee, which sounds totally bizarre to modern people, but because tea is essentially just dried leaves and boiling water, and coffee, of course, you have to roast the bean, then you have to grind the bean, then you have to do the boiling water bit. Other reasons, like the rise of debating societies or other clubs that would siphon off patrons. You could also point out that certain coffee houses would raise the admission price from beyond a penny to much more. This reminds me of, like, for example, paywalls. But one thing that I want to focus on, one cause of the fall of coffee houses was the fact that when they started limiting the amount of news sources that were allowed to be sold in their shops. So the news runners began to be limited, and even some coffee shops reached the point where they just simply sold their only their news sheet and nothing else could be sold. This is something that I hope, and I do believe that that YouTube, at least right now, is resisting the urge to go down. That YouTube does not take the analogous steps where certain topics, certain images, certain jokes become forbidden on YouTube. Now, I understand they can forbid things, and they do, like, again, the porn, which is fine. But if they go down the route of really trying to restrict humor, they're going to suffer, I believe, the same fate of these 18th century coffee houses, where they were simply disappeared and they no longer existed because they no longer served the function that people really loved them for. The people really loved the coffee houses not for the coffee or the food or whatever that's happening in those coffee houses. It was the discussion and the debates and the exchange of ideas and the drama they experienced, the entertainment they experienced, the fun, the keks. They didn't call it kek, of course. They just laughed. It's just that sort of environment is being, in my opinion, being created by YouTube. And they have to be very careful that they don't kill it. If they do kill it, something else will arise to replace it. And wow, I've been rambling for a while. So that's the analogy that's been kicking around in my head. It doesn't really deserve a full video of its own. It's just the idea that YouTube is like a giant coffee house shop from back then in the 17th, 18th century. And it's filled with a wildly diverse, glorious group of individuals. That is, your rise is not really based on your class. It's based on your ability to express your ideas. It's based on the ability to be entertaining. It's based on your ability to just simply attract people who are interested in whatever you're talking about and whatever you're doing, whether you're playing games or discussing serious political philosophies. I just hope that YouTube does not kill itself by conceding too much to this social warrior crap, this sort of war on humor. Did I just say that? War on something? If you kill political comedy, if you kill any sort of comedy, if you start limiting the expression of art to just to certain modes, just to the approved methodologies, the approved images, your art itself, that whole human expression begins to die. I mean, if you're only allowed to paint a stone in the 14 approved strokes, then, your painting of stones become really dull. Anyway, that's my chatting. Hope you enjoyed it. Likes up, thumbs, all that great crap I have. Oh, shit, I just hit the microphone. Everybody, I'm pretty drunk. I'll talk to you later.